Hey, what's up, guys? Note Investor here. Is the next alt season upon us? Maybe, but Bitcoin needs to start showing some signs of strength first. I'm going to cover the charts very quickly, won't do any news items today. There's lots to talk about, so I will be scheduling a live stream tomorrow, so look out for that. It will be Tuesday, midday sometime my time, so around noon, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so look out for that. But I will go in a lot more depth there, take your questions, your thoughts, but I want to cover some quick charts here. I will do an update on Bitcoin and then very quickly cycle through a handful of altcoins that I'm watching, and there's just so many charts that are sitting very tight and setting up. It's just a matter of, can we see some good action out of Bitcoin? So looking at the 4-hour chart, this is the BTC Bitstamp chart, and you can see we had that very tight action here over the weekend and then just started to stair step higher, and it was just sitting tight for a long time. Then we had to move down, sitting tight, and then we had a nice pop to the upside on Friday. And if you go to the 1-hour chart, that really started to stair step its way higher. It was looking good. You see some big volume move to the upside, then it just sat tight for several hours. Another big volume spike to the upside, then sat tight. And then here today, bam, you give it all up in about 30 minutes, and just is the nature of BTC right now. Just very erratic, very all over the place. But one thing I was watching during this little bit of a rally, the shorter term time frames looked very strong. The 1-hour looked good. The 4-hour looked good. It was climbing steadily, retracing back to that moving average. The momentum index was strong here, but we saw this big reversal. And if you go to the daily chart, and I've been talking about this a lot, the point of resistance continues to be this near-term moving average. So if you look at the 10 EMA here, also this declining trend line that's still very much in place. And so that ultimately needs to be taken out. It was trying here over the last day or so. It was looking like it wanted to, but nonetheless, we hit that line again, and there it is, pulling back right from there. The point to watch, though, is look at how narrow and how tight this chart is starting to get here. So these next couple of days are going to be very important as we are hitting a little bit of a confluence of a couple of resistance points here. So you got support just underneath, in and around that 6,500 down to 6,400 area, which was the most recent low. And then you have this trend line resistance, you have this moving average starting to tighten up, and this little zone right here, which is the next 3 or 4 days, and most likely before then, we'll see this thing have another move up or down. Now, if you ask me which way do I think it's going to go, well, odds favor it's going to go lower just because of the way the chart's set up. I mean, there's a little bit of a descending triangle here. The momentum has clearly been to the downside. So the pressure, the momentum is certainly in favor of the sellers right now, and that's most likely where it would go. You see this big volume selling after a couple of days of light volume increase, and that's just been the trend here for so many, the last couple of weeks at least here. So we're getting close. Now, if you missed my video where I talk about, Bitcoin will bottom out in April, and I showed this chart, and this is the weekly chart here, and we're close to that, right? We're still in this box. I'm looking for a bottom potentially either this week or next week. This chart goes through April 23rd is where I think that would take place. So go check that out. I'll link it in the video notes below so you can check that out if you haven't. And so it'll be interesting to see the timing to see if it does bottom out here within the next couple of weeks. The price ultimately is anyone's guess. If we break lower, then the price that I'm looking at is this box here between 6K and the 5K, so around the 5,500 is really the area that I'm going to be watching. So that's still in play, but that'd be interesting to see if this does play out. BTC finds a bottom here in the next week or two, then the alts would likely start to run, and probably before that, if they start to sense that Bitcoin is putting in a pretty good low. And we're already seeing some pretty good action in a lot of the altcoins. And so let's get to that. So I'm going to show some daily charts in a lot of these names just to kind of set the big picture view on some of this stuff. And you can just see, in the macro view, so many of these alts have found a pretty good low versus Bitcoin, and now they're just sitting tight, and they're starting to build these good lows. These bases are starting to set up. The overhead resistance is very clear in a lot of these names where you can see that they've tested this point a couple of times. This is Cardano, for example, Cardano BTC, and just sitting tight here. And the overhead is is very clear, and if they start to move out, and you'll see if we zoom in the chart, a lot of these are starting to show signs of accumulation. You're seeing some big volume spikes as some of this is starting to be accumulated here at these lows. And so got to start paying attention to some of this stuff, because there's a lot of alts that are starting to set up. They're putting in some good reversal patterns, some good bottoming patterns, and it's almost like they're just setting up and waiting for BTC to do its thing, to show the next direction here. Binance coins, another one I've been talking about here, and it's continuing to just consolidate this most recent move. You can see it's coming right back to this support line that's been this upper trend series of higher lows so far. Right now that sits right around that 1150 area, and overhead resistance has been that that $14 mark, $13.90 or so. And so that's the level I'm watching. We're right back here. It'll be interesting to see if this can rally higher. Now Binance versus BTC, it's just pausing. It hit that old all-time high number and it's just pulling back right below that. So that's ideal. You want that. You want to see this thing pause a little bit, let this RSI cool off a little bit, and that'll give it a good base from which to set up a break into the new highs. Neo had a pretty good run yesterday out of nowhere. Just a ton of volume came in. You can see that on this 4-hour chart. The big bar moved very quickly. Is pulling back now, setting up a little bit of a secondary entry point, holding this moving average. We saw it rallying again earlier, and here it is pausing. If you go to the daily chart, again, another one that has had this long pullback, and we'll look at the USD pair right now, but bouncing right off of this low and then just strong volume. And you got to start paying attention when you see these big volume reversals from the low. That definitely gets on my radar. I mean, just a big spike like that shows that that's a pretty good low. A ton of support came in right there. If you go to the USD pair, you can see it's found support here right at this long time support area that I was watching between 50 and the low $40 range, and that's where we found some support here near term. We've seen some good volume coming in on this daily chart, and again, just zooming in a little bit, you can see this is just pulling back here, starting to hold this moving average, but it just feels like it's starting to turn the corner here after a very long and very deep pullback. And a lot of these alts are starting to put in these lows, starting to say no more, and showing a little bit of life here. OMG was looking pretty good here as well. The level I was watching was that 950, 960 area. It did try a breakout attempt yesterday with some of these other names moving stronger, but then just with Bitcoin selling off, this one certainly pulled right back in. If you go to the BTC pair, it's sitting really tight. So OMG BTC is still sitting there pretty tight. Couple of others to watch here. So WAN broke out of this tight range here, had a pretty nice move over the weekend, and then just sitting tight here and setting up another one here. So you got to watch this little bit of a flag and just pausing right now. Status, look at how tight this is, just a very narrow range and basing out here. Had a little bit of a breakout a couple of weeks ago and just now just pausing and sitting here. 0x, we saw that pretty wild action late last week, but if you zoom out and just really watch this daily chart, just the overall pattern is still very much there, still setting up, showing signs of accumulation. This was the first ERC20 announcement. This was Coinbase, but you discount those wicks, and this one's still basing out here and putting in a strong little formation right now. Another small cap name, District. You're watching this, seeing some volume coming in here, a little bit of spikes here at the lows. We saw VeChain pump in a little bit earlier today. There was, rumors of an upcoming announcement, partnership. They started following Louis Vuitton on Twitter, and they got everybody all excited here. But nonetheless, the chart still looks good. You look at this daily chart. We had this low a couple of days ago, week and a half ago, rounding out, starting to move higher now. If you zoom in, go to the hourlies, and you can see it's just starting to break out here. This was, kind of on that partnership rumor news, but still looking strong. If you go to the 4-hour chart, you can see there's just starting to show signs of accumulation. A lot of these charts are starting to look this way, where they're putting in a pretty good low, they're moving higher slowly versus Bitcoin, and just starting to step their way up. Here's EOS, another one that's been looking pretty good here. EOS USD is just sitting very tight lately over the last week or so, just getting very narrow here in this range, and this is a pretty narrow range when you look at the downside being around the low $5 range. The upside on the breakout point doesn't need to break the very high. It could just go to the 650 range, so about a dollar range. EOS BTC stair stepping higher. On the daily chart here, you can see just normal pullbacks right to this moving average, then strong volume move up, and then another pullback, strong volume move up, and here it is right on the moving average again, and looking like it wants to move higher. And so there are certainly some good setups starting to form out there, but risk remains as long as BTC is living in this downtrend and trying to fight this overhead resistance. The risk remains that, you know, these quick sell-offs will spill over into the alts, and that's certainly been the case here. We see some nice little rallies, but as soon as BTC starts to move lower, the alts certainly react to that. So that's going to be the thing to watch over the next couple of days to see how this plays out. I will cover a lot more during the live stream tomorrow, so be sure to check that out and get your charts and your questions ready. Until next time, take care.